Wars are often portrayed as economic opportunities for certain nations. This narrative often focuses on short-term gains, like increased military spending or resource acquisition. However, a comprehensive analysis reveals a far more complex and troubling reality. The true costs of war, both economic and humanitarian, often far outweigh any perceived benefits. Understanding the long-term economic ramifications of war requires looking beyond immediate gains. The destruction of infrastructure, displacement of populations, and disruption of global trade create ripple effects that can cripple economies for generations. Moreover, the diversion of resources from essential sectors like healthcare, education, and infrastructure weakens a nation's long-term economic potential. Therefore, it is crucial to move beyond simplistic narratives of war profiteering and recognize the multifaceted and often devastating economic consequences of armed conflict. Certain nations and industries may experience economic advantages during wartime. The United States often sees increased profits for defense contractors during conflicts. Russia benefits from global instability that fuels demand for its weapons. China leverages its manufacturing capabilities in war-torn regions. European nations like the UK and France may see a surge in arms sales. Israel profits from global anxieties about cyber warfare. Increased military spending often comes at the expense of social programs. While some nations might experience temporary economic gains from war, others suffer catastrophic losses. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine has decimated its economy, with widespread destruction of infrastructure and displacement of millions. Syria, ravaged by a decade-long civil war, faces a humanitarian crisis and a shattered economy. Iraq, following decades of conflict, struggles to rebuild its infrastructure and revive its oil industry. Afghanistan, after 20 years of war, faces a collapsed economy and widespread poverty. Yemen, embroiled in a brutal civil war, grapples with famine and economic collapse. Libya, following the NATO intervention, remains mired in instability and economic hardship. These examples highlight the devastating and long-lasting economic consequences of war, particularly for countries directly involved in conflict. Section 4. The hidden costs of war. War's economic impacts go beyond casualties and destruction. The psychological toll on children affects future productivity and stability. Refugee influx strains resources and creates tensions. Weapon proliferation fuels instability and future conflicts. Environmental damage from war has long-term economic impacts. Cleaning up and rebuilding burdens economies for decades. Section 5. Beyond the balance sheet. Ethical considerations. While economic considerations are essential in evaluating the impacts of war, it is crucial to recognize the paramount importance of ethical and humanitarian concerns. The loss of human life, the displacement of populations, and the suffering inflicted on innocent civilians can never be justified by economic gains, however substantial they may seem. The moral imperative to protect human life and dignity must always supersede economic considerations. The pursuit of peace, even when it requires economic sacrifices, is not only a moral obligation but also a sound long-term investment. Investing in diplomacy, conflict resolution, and sustainable development creates a more stable and prosperous world for all nations. Therefore, it is imperative to prioritize ethical considerations and reject the notion that war can ever be economically justifiable. Section 6. Choosing peace, a moral and economic imperative. The economic impacts of war are complex and far-reaching, with devastating consequences for both winners and losers. While some nations might experience temporary economic gains, the long-term costs of conflict, including destroyed infrastructure, displaced populations, and lost human potential, far outweigh any perceived benefits. Moreover, the ethical implications of war, with its inherent violence and suffering, can never be ignored. Therefore, it is essential to recognize that peace is not only a moral imperative, but also a sound economic choice. Investing in diplomacy, conflict resolution, and sustainable development creates a more just, equitable, and prosperous world for all. By prioritizing peace, we choose a path that benefits humanity as a whole and ensures a more sustainable and prosperous future for generations to come.